Welcome, everyone. So before I say anything, I need to say this. I need to say Ngadlu Tambadi Ngadlu Garna Yartanga Tikanti. So in the language of the Ghana people, on whose land these botanic gardens have been created and on whose land Moment Factory are doing beautiful things and on whose land we're all making our lives, it's really important to acknowledge that today. My name is John Carty. I'm a Professor of Museum and Curatorial Studies at the University of Adelaide, and this session today is part of the university's Make History a series of talks that we're exploring some of these great big ideas and these big movements in our town and in our country. And we're really lucky today, as you all know, because you bought tickets, to have two of the genii. I don't know what plural geniuses are. In Canadian, it's probably...
We've never used that
better.
term to describe ourselves.
The genii. Mathieu, who is the producer at Moment Factory. Thomas, who's the multimedia director also. And we also have, and we're very lucky to have, the chief botanist of our incredible town, Michelle Waycott, here, to look at the relationship between these gardens and the ideas that are playing out in Moment Factory's work. So welcome. We've started a bit early because you have been organised. Bless you, Adelaideans. You've got here early, you're up here. So we're going to steal a few more minutes to really explore some of these ideas. Then you will be taken down, obviously, to the other site. But this is obviously the premium experience up here. So you guys are getting it first. Don't tell the others. So I thought, look, I think the most important thing to start with then is a bit of context about Moment Factory, Mathieu. And I'm wondering if you could just tell people about Moment Factory to open us up.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. It's bizarre because we work at night normally. So seeing people during the day it's a little bit of a different experience for us. Moment Factory, we've been around for roughly 20 years. The company started working in nightclubs and raves and bars and entertaining the masses, but in a very different way, in more of a nightlife way. You know, multimedia sort of took off in those type of industries. And through the years, we come to discover other ways of honing our craft and bringing our craft to the people. And the company evolved through time. There's about 450 people work for Moment Factory right now around the world. In Tokyo, we have offices in New York, Montreal, Paris, an office in Singapore. So we've taken our brand, or what we do, what we love to do, and taken it really around the world. And about 10 years ago, we were invited out to a small village in eastern Quebec called Quetzcook, and they had the longest suspension bridge in the world, apparently, pedestrian suspension bridge. And they wanted us to light it up. So when the team got there, they discovered a bridge, as one would when you go visit a bridge. But what we also discovered was this massive gorge below and this incredible vista on nature. And the team went from wanting to light the bridge to wanting to take over this whole space, to light the forest, to light the ground, the river, the rocks, the sky above it. And we left the meeting and sort of said no to the bridge project, but what do you think of this? And we pitched what became Forest Illumina, which was our first Illumina project, our first night walk, an enchanted night walk at night. This year we celebrated our 10th anniversary of Illumina Night Walks. That site alone has seen over 1 million visitors since then. We're opening up this summer our 19th Illumina around the world. This show here is our second large-scale digital art experience in nature. And we've just decided that this is something we love. When I came to the company, I came to do rock shows. I produced things for Billie Eilish and Childish Gambino and Linkin Park, and I was rock and roll tour buses, arenas, and smoke and lights and haze and lasers and sex, drugs, and rock and roll, all that. But when I discovered this team within the company, I was like, I can do all that, but outside, and it brought me to another place where I enjoyed producing these things outside. So as a company, we've come to really embrace this, and it's actually something that's permeated back into our other work, working in nature. I don't know if some of you saw Mirror Mirror. In the last couple of days, we set up at Victoria Square. But even within that indoor experience, nature has found its way into that space through sounds, through images, through ideas. So I think nature is definitely a part of us. So being here in the garden with you, is a wonderful, wonderful experience. So we thank you for that. That's a little bit who we are and how we came to be here. Yeah.
Nice summary. We'll hand over to Tomas. Do you want to talk just a little bit about opening up the idea of, or the ideas around Resonate?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So Resonate is the new show. Last year it was, the previous 2 years it was Light Cycle. This year when we started to design and think about this experience, we kind of did a very beautiful collaboration within some designer in Montreal. And what we wanted to do at some point, it was to make it different. We wanted to go into like very intense, more intense, but let's hit emotions. So emotions was very the target of this experience. And what we developed, it was in some moment of our life, we feel very deep connection with nature at very precise moment. Like, I don't know, you feel you are in a moment in your life when things are changing. So, and then you go out and you take a walk and there's a storm somewhere, like in the far. And then you create this kind of connection with nature, a resonance with nature. Those moments when, very unique moments, that it seems that there's some kind of a colliding of your own personal experience and what the nature is telling you. So this idea brought us to design 6 new zones right here. And what we decided to do, it was also to create something not literal, but more like in the inspiration, some more poetry. So the structure of the show, as you walk in a new zone, in a zone, first you will encounter some words that floats. Those words are poems. And the way you hear those words, it's really more to open your mind to what is about to happen. It's not to tell you exactly what the experience is about and the theme is about, but it's more to align your brain and your emotion to connect and make of this experience something unique for yourself. There's also a few words that are some kind of a call to action that invites you to behave in a way of have an intent to also help you to connect with what you're about to live and experience. Like here, it's about memories. So we invite you to enter the circle, to experiment the connection with the multimedia. So Resonate is really about this. It's about the resonance between nature and yourself in very specific moments.
Thanks, Tomas. We're going to come back to that in profound and existential ways in about 10 to 15 minutes. So hold that thought, friends. I want to hand over to Michelle Waycott now with a question. And Michelle, if I can get you to step forward a couple of steps so the people on this side can have full access to the story. Resonate's not happening in a void. It's happening here in Adelaide's Botanic Gardens, which is a very specific place on planet Earth. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of this site and what it means to you?
So Adelaide Botanic Gardens is one of the jewels in the crown botanic gardens in Australia and even the world. It occasionally makes the top 10 botanic gardens in the world lists. And there's a few things about it exceptional. First of all, the Botanic Gardens here was planned. It was planned from day one. Colonel Light's mapping out of how the Adelaide city would work included having a substantial space that was these kind of plantings. So that was in the 1850s. And at that time, the community was desperate to know which plants would grow well here, what would live, what would survive, what would grow and be productive, what would make good timber trees, what would make good shade trees. All of those things were questions that were being asked. And then by the time they opened the Botanic Gardens in 1857, faux pas there, we knock 100 years off the age of the place. So over 170 years ago, the plantings here were done in a very classic Victorian style, which was really quite revolutionary at the time, and is still thought of as one of the real Victorian laid out botanic gardens in Australia, probably the best example of it. Now, a really cool thing is that some of these trees we can see from this spot, and speaking of memories, these trees have a memory that predates the whole life of this botanic gardens. These big Araucarias, these bunya and hoop pines, these were planted when the garden was first established. So these are coming up for 172 to 173 years old. That's amazing. We even have plants in the botanic gardens that were here before Europeans arrived and started setting up their colony. There's an old Eucalyptus camaldulensis, a river red gum down near the North Lodge. So these plants have this memory and they have this real sense of occupancy and space, and they changed the place around them. Now, when botanic gardens became a little bit more integrated into the city, and Adelaide has always had a very strong connection to botanical interests. Things like rose gardens and European gardens have always been a really strong feature of the culture of the Adelaide city. They've changed over time. So from establishing which plants would grow here to creating spaces for the local community to be entertained and occupied, to teach people about what was out there, to conservation. By the late 1950s, people were really starting to be worried about the species that we were losing around the world. And so botanic gardens shared seeds across the world, and trees and plants were then grown in a way that was supposed to help them protect the future of those species. Climate change in the 1960s was already something people in botanic gardens were worrying about. How do we keep watering going? How do we keep the plants healthy when the climate is changing? So they change culturally depending on the needs. Now, we're going to talk in a minute about what opening our gardens up to these kinds of amazing events can do. But as an institution in Adelaide City, being so central to Adelaide City itself, there's a lot of things that have already happened here and will continue to happen here over time. And I think it's a really strong testament to how Adelaide has really committed itself to not only its parklands and botanic gardens, but to including nature in its everyday life. And I think we are now extending that to the interface between art and science and these amazing places. So there's just a 10-second summary of of 170 years of organisation.
Slightly more than 10 seconds, but it was spectacularly succinct. I mean, I'm just listening to what Michelle's saying and just thinking that gardens make us human. You know, that the ideas layered into a place like a botanic garden are about the ideas we use to create places for ourselves in the world and to think them through. And I think, you know, my experience of what Moment Factory are doing here is that it's opening up that question in a really interesting way about what makes us human, not just what's light, what's lasers, what's trees. There's a bigger question there. And again, I'm taunting you by saying we'll come to that. But I want to build up to that because you didn't get to come, and Michelle's just given this extraordinary story about what this place is in the life of this city and of this community. But you didn't get to just come here and work with this site initially in the way that you normally would. I think COVID gave you guys a hell of a curveball with light cycles. And I wanted you to reflect on, tell us a little bit about how strange it was to work remotely with these gardens, but then reflect on how working here for a few years has changed the way you're working here and how the gardens have informed your own practice.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we received the first call from Lee and Rachel, the founders of Illuminate Adelaide, 6 months prior to the summer of 2021. In Montreal at that point, we were in full lockdown. It was, streets were closed, no one was going out. We had all shifted to working from home, like everywhere else in the world outside of Australia, who managed it in a completely different way. But we found ourselves taking this call, and a call like, come and develop this monstrous show in our garden for this event that has never existed before and that will start to exist at this time of humanity. At which point the company said, well, we'd have to send 25 people and do it like we regularly do it. And their answer was, well, that's impossible. I mean, we can maybe get 4 people into the country. Because at that point borders were closed. So we, as a company, looked inwards and did what any right-minded person would do. We actually said no. We said, sorry, we can't do it. As a company. And then myself and Gabrielle, who you'll meet a little bit later, we weren't satisfied with that answer. We weren't satisfied with the idea that what was going on in the world at that point was going to stop us from creating this connection to people who obviously wanted to work with us. So we came to develop a relationship over time with Lee, Rachel, Daniel. Varasi was the producer of this experience. So very early, we were presented to like-minded individuals who gave us the confidence, and we created a mutual dialogue. We ended up, in that first year, we didn't have much direct contact actually with the gardens. Everything was done through the local production team, but in full respect of the space. So we actually looked at satellite photos, 3D cameras walking through the park, thousands and thousands of photos. We drew a first path. Daniel and PK sent us a second path. We drew a fourth path. They're like, well, this is a tree. This is interesting. This is a nice zone. There's, we would describe what we were looking for in regards to zones, what we wanted the people to feel like just coming into the space. And then they were given the task of walking the site day in, day out, night in, night out, and creating a repertoire of options for us to work with. Certain spaces we brought in, high technology to do 3D scans of areas and spaces to really understand what the space looked like. Over a 6-month period, we had chosen our sites, had developed it, and actually what we ended up doing that first year was, and this is part of our practice, but we have a place in Sutton, which is about an hour and a half away from Montreal, and we call it the Forest Lab, and it's actually the cottage of one of the owners of the company. He's got a cottage and a second cottage. It's a homestead. It's a nice place. And there's 2 lakes on this land. There's very diverse forests, a few different species of trees. And every year we end up going there for 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time sometimes to test the shows that are in development. So this Forest Lab is a way that we've come to connect with sites before we actually get there. So we just reapplied that, but to here. And then we had Chris and, again, Daniel and the team doing tests here. So we had ideas. We would test it in our Forest Lab. We would send them ideas. They would test it in this Forest Lab. And through that process, we aligned on certain principles, on certain approaches to do this in this space. And that's how it worked. Then we got on a plane. Gabrielle, PO, Pierre-Olivier was the technical director. And we sat in quarantine for 14 days at the Peppers Weymouth Hotel. I lucked out, my friends. I had a balcony. I had a bathroom, a palatial bathroom, and 3 tables. I could have breakfast, lunch, and dinner in different spots in the room. Gabriel was in a single 1-room thing. He's the creative director. He's like, I'm going crazy in here. Anyways, it lasted 14 days. But when we got out, the first thing we did was come here. And we knew exactly where to go. We knew exactly where to walk. The space blew us away because obviously you see things on photo and everything's flat. So, but we knew where to go, and the space though it enchanted us instantly. So from there we had I think 3 weeks to finish building the show, maybe 2 weeks, and yeah. So knowing a space, getting to know a space, and then actually getting to know it was 2 different things. And even when we showed up, we're like, oh, we know the space. I know where to go, but it wasn't the case. I mean, we really got to know it when we got here. Yeah, so things evolved in that first time. And then since then, we walked away that first year looking at sites that we would want to expand on for the second year, because we're always thinking, how do we make it bigger, better, different? And last year was very much the same. We left with the idea of creating something new. Yeah.
Can I add?
Yeah.
I'd like to add something on that. Yeah. Okay. But what Mathieu is telling you, and what happened here, has also influenced the way we think and the way we work on the forest projects now. So we used to fly, and many people, we used to get to put a lot of energy to get to know a garden or a forest. But now we are very more conscious of the impact on the environment. So we have already removed like one strategic travel. Now we kind of think we have like we have the eco responsibility in-house. So we are really trying to align our work to be also aligned with our values, to bring people in forest, to connect with nature. So what happened here, like 2-3 years ago, has a resonance now within the factory. Yeah.
Resonance. Okay, we could not avoid saying that. We tried to avoid saying it, but Tomas stuffed it up for everyone. I think that question of values and the way we work is really important in probably also reflecting back. Like, you've had this relationship with this site that has impacted your work. I wonder, Michelle, like, has the way that Moment Factory's opened up this space, and it's opened it up for me. I think I've got young kids. We came here to see light cycles. They went, gardens, lasers and gardens, but it doesn't matter. It got their attention. My daughter now just comes here with her teenage friends, and they spend their holidays hanging out in the gardens and talking about conifers and things. Like, I've got a strange Marxist child who's into gardens, but that's a different story. But in our family, it's brought us back to this site as a place that we make our lives and enjoy. I wonder, Michelle, has it changed, or is it opening up the ideas that you have about the future of these gardens and their place in our community?
It's really interesting. The short answer is yes, but there's a context to it. And that is, since 2017, when the Royal Adelaide Hospital from over there closed down, the way people engage with this botanic gardens has changed significantly. We used to have a very large number of people come and visit just because it was next door to the hospital. And we used to have people wandering around with their trolley things with their IV lines and in wheelchairs and things at lunchtime. And the loss of that was significant for us as an organisation providing a space for people. And then following that, when COVID happened and we had our relatively mild, short periods of lockdown, we kept this garden open, and we had a lot of people coming here in relatively small numbers, but because it was open and we kept being available. So when the opportunity to create new experiences for people started happening, and we had a broader philosophy of trying to make the site accessible in as many ways as possible, the Moment Factory proposals were really quite inspiring and added that link to creativity and helping people understand their landscape. And one of our missions here is to expose people to and help people achieve a greater awareness of plants in the botanical world and how important they are and how to appreciate diversity. And seeing it through different eyes and different lenses is a really important part of that. So the answer is absolutely yes, but it's part of our longer journey of adapting to our current place in the world, which is as a place for people to learn and experience and have places to come and visit. And every time I tell someone in the community, whether I'm at a checkout in Woolies or at the university teaching, nearly everyone I talk to has been here or has an experience here as a kid or coming to an event. And that providing more ways for that to happen is a really serious part of our business. So thanks, guys. It's been an eye-opener for us to find new ways of sharing, but also for us to continue that journey and be more relevant in the future. Yeah.
We're going to end our session today by actually playing some of the music that's here. I don't know if you have seen the show already. Hopefully most of you have. If not, you will. Well, we're going to play some of that music.
Who's seen the show?
Can we get a show of hands? Okay. Well, most of you haven't then, so this is going to be surreal and abstract. But it's going to be amazing and very different with nature's spotlight doing its beam. But before we get to that final bit of music that will tie off this premium experience before you head down to the shed. I just wanted to ask one final question, because I think there's this, what Michelle's talking about and what you guys are talking about is not lasers and not just gardens, but there's this thing in the middle of that, which is that we are doing these things together. Like, you're not making Moment Factory for one person to go and meditate on their own. You're having a shared experience in a public space. And post-COVID, I think this question of public ritual, places, without romanticizing that word, places where we go and do things together, where we create meaning together, where we share an experience, is quintessentially human. And I wonder how that informs what Moment Factory is doing here, and how that's changing in the way that you work with this site.
I'll start. Moment Factory's slogan is, "We do it in public." I'll just put it out there. Everything we do is we do it in public. We do what? That's up to you to decide. But when we get a call to do an intervention, whether it's in a cityscape or it's in an airport, massive, multimedia installations, a casino, whether it's a hospital that's looking to create a fun entryway for the children who are there, or our first question is, will we bring people together? Will we connect people to the space and to each other through this work? And if the answer is yes, then we take the mandate. And if the answer is no, then we push it off. We let go of it. And there's other companies in the world who create great media for television, for personal consumption. But our goal has always been to connect people through this. This space is special in a second way, because another idea that's very fundamental in the company is the notion of the campfire. And the campfire as a place of reunion, of a place of exchange, a place to listen to stories, to tell stories, to reconnect. Uncle Mickey last night was talking about a story of two brothers. You've probably heard the story. I'm not going to go into it. If you ever see Uncle Mickey in town, ask him about it. But it was the notion of a brother who liked the dark and a brother who liked the light. And so, the brother who liked the dark, for his other brother, decided to create fire or bring him that to help guide him. These spaces that we do, it's kind of what we do. It's a digital campfire. Our tools have changed. There's a reason why this zone here is in a circle. It was not to get the best view of this gorgeous piece of infrastructure. It was, this at night disappears. It becomes about the gaze between you guys and the people across the way. It becomes a link, between the central structure of light that comes up from here. But that connection is at the very heart of what we do. I rambled there. Did I shy away? Did I get? Well, that was it.
No, I think you didn't ramble. And maybe, Tomas, you have some thoughts on this as well.
So this, just to take this place as a reference, this is about memories. This is about those moments in life, as I said at the very beginning. It's like, let's say you have lost someone that is very important for you, or just someone that was standing beside of you for years, and so that idea of a memory, it was to let's gather around those memories of like people that has light our ways in the past. But it's not about being like alone, like in the dark, and thinking of those people. It's more about the fact that they still light our way. And so we didn't want, hey, hello you. I like this guy. So as Mathieu was saying, it's more like a campfire. We gather around the campfire, and then at some point, your mind might just go thinking about someone and looking at the sky, looking at the stars, and it's not staying just with you. It's like when you gaze, you look around, you see your brother, your sister, your friends, unknown people. So the idea here, it was to keep people in the light. So there's light under the chairs. All music is synchronized. So at some point, it starts, it's very moody, and then there's voices that comes. And then when those voices comes, that single beacon of light start tilting like a pendulum. And it moves around the circle, and the lights under the chair just follow the movement of the beacon. And you can look at the people around the circle. You can see their reaction. You can see their emotion. So it becomes a collective experience. So this is how we see our intervention in forests. It's something we want the people to look at others. We want the people to feel the emotions of others, so it becomes collective. So this is really, for me, this zone is a very good example of what drives us into those beautiful adventures.
Thanks, Thomas. That's a really beautiful insight into what we experience here, which I did the other night and felt exactly that. So I think we will end this experience now by giving you a taste of that under different lighting conditions, but same principle. We're here together having a moment with the factory guys. So the music will come on, stay with it, and then when that's over, we'll send you down the hill to another premium experience. I should stop running that down. So over to you, Mathieu.
So we'll play this song. What you're getting is the soundtrack at full show volume, so hold on tight. You know, I'd invite you at this point to, obviously the light show isn't there, but as we said, it's a very simple gesture. So find a spot in the garden, find another pair of eyes in the group, and we'll listen. It's 4 minutes, 6 seconds. Yeah, and just see where it takes you. See who you connect with along this path, and we'll walk out with you guys after this.
Welcome everyone to the Bicentennial Conservatory here at the Adelaide Botanical Garden. I'm Dr. David Kroll, Deputy Head of School for Architecture and Civil Engineering at the University of Adelaide. And I'm joined today by Dr. Leonie Scriven, Deputy Director, Living Collections of the Botanic Gardens and State Herbarium. And then also two of Moment Factory's best, Gabrielle Pombriand, and creative director, and Pierre-Olivier Durand, production manager. So we are fortunate enough to gather today in this spectacular building. Not only is it a botanical wonderland, but the addition of technology, lights, and original landscapes, soundscapes by the Moment Factory team for their show Resonate has amped the vibrancy of this green tropical rainforest land to the next level. And so to start off, I would like to ask a question to Gabrielle and Pierre. So can you please give us a brief introduction to the Moment Factory and your new show, Resonate?
Great.
And you probably would have heard some of this already, but maybe they have their own version of that. So yeah, thanks.
Hopefully it's the same version as my colleague.
All right, okay,
yeah,
that's good.
I'm kidding. Yeah, basically, I'm Gabrielle. I come from Montreal, as you will notice it. I have a strong accent. I'm French-Canadian. And also about Moment Factory, we are a company from Montreal. We are a multimedia studio. And we have a project all around the world. But basically, our motto is make sure we do it in public. And what we want to do is to gather people together. We like when we can live experience and we can share those moments. And this is all about it. And to be here in the Botanical Garden, it's the 3rd year. We are really lucky because we developed this friendship with Illuminate Adelaide, but also with the Botanical Garden. And it was really a blast just to be here and to share those moments and those projects together. Then about Resonate, it's really interesting because we did Light Cycle for 2 years with the colleagues here, and we were really proud of the show about this experience. And Lee and Rachel from Illuminate Adelaide asked us, do you know what? Do you think you can create a new show for 2023? 23, yes. And for us as creative was like kind of a challenge because this show, Light Cycle, it's inspired by nature, and also the Resonate was the same thing. But how can we create something with the same site, the same type of language, but with a different art direction, different music, different perspective? And the beauty of nature, it's really great because nature has many perspectives. When you are in a theater, you always have the same perspective. You always sit in the middle or in the side, and you see this black box with this specific angle. When you are in the nature, you have endless perspective. I'm talking about Murdoch Alley, this wonderful alley where you never have that. About this building where you have this sense of space, of discovery, about the vision of this architect. To have access to that, it's really a bless for us as creative team. Few words about Resonate. It's really simple. It's sometimes in life you have some moment where you feel you are connected with nature. You can have those inner tempests where you feel like you have some struggle. For us, we have a way to evoke that. We did an installation called Transformation on Murdoch Alley. Here, the theme, it's Winter Rings. It's a place where you are in the middle of winter and you feel alone. You want to be like just alone and just be just with yourself. We feel this is our evocation of this space called Winter Rings on this wonderful site. And I will talk to you a little bit about the inspiration of it. But yeah, basically, this is it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Gabriel. So I have one question for Leonie. So I'm sure that the people here are interested to hear a bit more about this building and the space that we're here in at the moment. So could you tell us a bit about the building, about the history, and also about the living collection in here? Thank you.
Yep, of course, David. Welcome, everybody. This building was commissioned by the Board of the Botanic Gardens in 1988 here on Kaurna land. Always was, always will be, and we're very lucky to be able to steward a living collection of plants in the Botanic Gardens on this land that we have today. So it was a building that had a theme. It was an opportunity to try and create a structure that could grow a tropical rainforest. And the reason we wanted a tropical rainforest because at the time there was a lot of destruction of rainforest around the world, particularly through Brazil and the Amazon and areas, and it was very much the environmental conversation of the moment. So this building was commissioned. It's a curvilinear structure and is 100 metres long by 47 metres wide by 27 metres high. It's a very iconic building for anyone in Adelaide. You know your home when you come fly in over the Bicentennial Conservatory. You see it on the ground as you come in, and I think any visitor to Adelaide, it's one of those things that you see when you first come in and when you see when you leave. So it is very much part of the ethos of Adelaide. It's a building that's won 9 different design awards. So Guy Moron was the architect. He's a South Australian, so homebred, and it's a very innovative building. It's had a really interesting history. So it did start off with a living collection of rainforest plants, and I'm using the word living collection for a reason. So as a Botanic Gardens, we are a living museum. So every plant and every tree that we have in our garden has a record. It is an accession. It's no different to a museum that you'll see with objects. It has records about what the plants are, who's collected them, where they've come from, and we also keep horticultural records as well over time about how these plants grow so that we understand that. So we very much have a very strong conservation theme within the gardens. We are arcs of species diversity, but we're also wonderful places to visit when you put them in a landscape and create this gorgeous space. You've got opportunities to wander through, learn about plants, health and wellbeing, and then do things like, put Moment Factory on top of it and create this sort of, amazing opportunity. But the building itself was originally heated to get a tropical rainforest in Adelaide. It had heat. And so that heating was a really interesting, quite well-designed process. It was done through natural gas heating of water. So the pipes actually go underneath these boardwalks, and it would heat, the boilers would heat the water, the pipe would go through the building and naturally heat the building up. The only problem was, in order to do that, it was producing about 28% of the greenhouse gas emissions that the Botanic Gardens has as an organisation, and therefore, as a conservation organisation, that just doesn't sort of cut the mustard. It was a very controversial thing for us to understand and realise that, we were throwing out 360 tonnes of carbon into the air just by heating this building. So that sort of coincided at the same time with financial requirements, and it was also just thinking about how else we could actually use this building and make it really work for the environment that we had. It has a cooling and misting system too, and so that cooling and misting system was left on and the heating was turned off, and then it became free entry for people, which was wonderful. And the cooling system, misting system still works, but we have actually turned it off for this exhibition. We don't really need a whole pile of extra moisture and rain coming into this space. But I think that when you come through this winterings within Resonate, you'll very much get a feel for potentially what the Bicon would have felt like very originally when it was first designed, that feel of immersion, the fog and the moisture and the darkness and the, that really deep rainforest feel. These days it's drier, although it is very dry at the moment because the cooling and system's off. But it does work very well when it's on. If you've come to the gardens previously, this building hums. That hum is the cooling and irrigation system working. It has natural louvers in the ceilings, and so we open the louvers up, turn on the misters, you can just see them up the top there, and that can cool the building by 10 degrees in summer. So when it's 38 degrees outside, it's 28 degrees in here, and that's enough to stop these plants from getting stressed by the heat. And then through winter, it also means that it never goes below 5 degrees in here, and so keeps that minimum temperature, which is really important for a rainforest to survive. So we probably still have about 70% of the species diversity in here in the collections. We didn't lose that many. The ones that we did were things like coconuts, so yay. Considering some of the stories that you can tell, we still have many of those stories, and over the next few years we'll be working quite hard to increase the diversity in this forest, which really is very similar to what you might find on the Atherton tableland in North Queensland. And for me, there's some really resonating plants in here that I know quite well, so it's a special space for me, and we hope to have some more of those plants in here as part of the work that we do.
Thank you, Leonie. Thank you for telling us a bit about the building. And so now I'd like to ask Gabrielle and Pierre, how that building inspired you, and maybe also how you've worked with it and so on. If you could tell us a bit more about that.
Again, first inspiration for us is nature, but our inspiration was to design a place where you can lose limitation of the space. You can have this borderless space, and we have access to that because when you enter, this famous architect, designed already a sense of arrival where you enter and you have many perspectives. And our first goal was, can we make sure we can lose the sense of boundaries if we use maybe some lights come from under the pathway, if we use a little bit of mist and smoke, we have a way to lose this whole space and just to define the shadow of the trees. Basically, that was the first inspiration we got. And from Montreal, we had a lot of back and forth. But basically, this sense of losing boundaries was our first mission. And also, if some of you saw the show, you will notice the sound. The sound, it's more like really, you feel the vibration. It's like the inspiration of this zone, it's called winterings. It's to be in a moment when it's winter and you feel alone, you want to be just with yourself, you can reflect and you feel that. But basically that was our first inspiration. And the beauty of those installations is you can make your own imagination, your own dream. But with a site like that, for us, was really a bless because it's really rare we have access to those perspectives, I will say, basically, yeah.
Thanks, Gabrielle. That's really interesting. And I mean, it's no secret that this has been a great success, this kind of collaboration with the Botanic Garden and with Moment Factory over the last couple of years. And basically over the last 2 years, it has been sold out, and there have been 135,000 attendees each year, which is very impressive at this event. And I understand also that this kind of collaboration, when it first started, was a first of its kind. So there's a question for Leonie. Seeing that the theme of this is the Make History theme, and this is really an event that kind of made history for the garden, certainly. How would you say has this collaboration, transformed the perception, the perception of the Botanic Garden, but maybe also the way you manage the Botanic Garden going forward? Thanks.
It certainly has changed it. I think we've become braver. I think we've become a bit more innovative than potentially we were before. The garden, also, we've never been able to open it up at night. We don't have lights here. And if you're lucky enough, like I am, to come through the gardens at night, it's fascinating, but it's actually really scary. There are some really weird places and really dark places and lots of weird noises in this place. And so to be able to actually share, the Botanic Gardens in a whole new light and in a way that is technologically, just incredible. We're dealing with some of these plants that we have in this garden, they go back to the age of the dinosaurs. They've been, as a plant species around for a very long time, and yet here they are holding up some of the most modern technological, pieces of equipment for human enjoyment. So the irony's not escaped on me, and it was a way to look at the garden quite differently. So we look at it as as we said, it's a living museum, and our staff very much have favourite collections, and they spend a lot of time learning about their plants and the areas and looking after particular things, and so are very precious about their plants. I mean, I think about it as a house, and it's like there are some rooms you're happy to let people come into your house. Yep, you can come into my lounge room and sit, and I'll give you a cup of tea, but I don't really want you going into my laundry looking at my dirty socks, and geez, I don't think I'm going to let you in my bedroom. So, and that was very much part of where we sort of started to, a couple of years ago, was like, well, you want to do what? You want to do it where? And we just, I guess that we just learned to trust the partnership, trust the creative process, and just worked our way through each of the challenges. And I think, starting off really early with the pandemic, we were doing things by remote, we were doing things, by design, and then to sort of take these amazing ideas and bring them into spaces like this, it was really phenomenal. And we didn't have things hanging out of trees, we didn't have ropes and wires and cables and stuff going all over the place. There's parts of the gardens that we're working on. They're in a state of flux. They need some rejuvenation. It's not somewhere I would send people to go naturally, and yet you've been able to go in there and do magic. There are bits I don't even recognise when I come through here at night, and I know this place very well. And I think it really hit me. This week I came through Tuesday night for the technical rehearsal, and then I came through again last night with a different group, and the amount of fogging that was in here was different, and I got a different experience for exactly the same thing. And I came through and got very different images, different emotions, and different memories created. And how clever is that? You do something and you tweak something, and then you're able to do that to somebody. It's phenomenal. And for us as a gardens, it's really taught us a lot about being brave and trying new things. And and if people develop trust and respect, it's amazing what you can do together when you want to have the same themes, and very much it's around that immersive experience. So we hide our stuff too. We try and hide our irrigation pipes. We try and hide our electrical things and our security cameras, and some things we don't have enough of that we'd like to have more of, like our signs. But it's a very similar ethos, that it's a natural environment, but it's not. And then once you have the opportunity to put that magic on top, it's incredible. So I think it's just been a fantastic experience, and much braver and much wiser.
Thank you, Leonie. Thanks. So the next question I have is for Gabrielle and Pierre. And basically, my own background is in architecture, so I'm very interested to hear a bit more about if your process of planning, designing this installation, if that has been architectural in some way. And maybe also if you can tell us a bit about the kind of tools you've been using. Have you been using plans, 3D in some way? And I think also as an extension of that, was a lot of it done remotely or and in person, or
Yeah, thanks for the question, David. Hey guys. So how we did this was back in November, right? We started the design process of the space and trying to think, okay, how we've got this amazing building. What are the basics that we need? So let's get a top view plan, right? A base building plan. We go from there. Okay, we could install this very architectural process, but then there's no plants in that drawing, right? There's not these huge trees and vines that are growing everywhere. So quite the process to kind of say, yeah, okay, it fits in the plan, and then it's gonna fit when we get there. Oh no. So that's why we mesh with the Illuminate Adelaide team, and so we have people coming in here with 360 cameras, trying to take a look at it and saying, okay, I think we can put something there. Okay, it looks good. And as you were saying, David, a lot of it is done remotely also. So we have someone in here with their phone and we say, okay, take a step left. Oh, yeah, we like this. Take a picture now. So it's very different from, like you were saying, an architectural process, it was like going through someone else's perspective to design, right? Like looking through someone else's eyes and trusting them. So this was really away from the regular technical process. It was a full trust of having a team in here and saying, what do you guys think? What do you feel? Is it going to work? So it was really a nice meshing with them. So in terms of tools, we really went through technical drawings, 360 videos, images from the space, and then from there we sit in Montreal with the team. We put post-its on the boards, and we evolved from that to create this amazing experience. And then we arrive here on site, right? And we have those spider people that are actually climbing on the side of this with ropes and equipment and being very careful of what's in the garden, of the plants and everything. Obviously discussing with Leonie and the garden the garden people. So it was very impressive to come from a drawing design for the past few months to arrive in here and then to see these people climbing and attaching equipment. Quite the process from November to today.
Thank you, Pierre. I have another question for Gabrielle and Pierre. Basically, something I'd be interested in to hear more about is what your influences were as artists, and maybe also if you can tell us a bit about. I mean, certainly, experiencing your installations. There is it's very much an emotional, visual, or sensation experience. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Of course. We are so lucky to work outside because our first inspiration, it's nature, really simple as that. And the beauty of it to work on a site like that, it's you have a lot of beauty, you have a lot of beautiful and large trees. And for us, this always a way, we have some guiding principles when we started a project. Those guiding principles are really important. One of them is to enhance nature. The other is to make sure we hide the techniques. We are like magicians. We want to make sure it's a dream people will live. And we don't want to see the equipment, see the cable. We want to honor the site. And basically, it's always what we keep in mind. Sometimes we'll try to play with illusion. We have a way of creating illusion where you don't understand how it's made. Sometimes that can be a movement of lights, gonna trigger something in your mind. We want to open imagination also of the people. But basically the nature for the last 10 or 12 years, it's our main inspiration, and we are so lucky just to have that. Basically, yeah.
Great, that's really interesting, and certainly, yeah, I feel like experiencing this also gives you a different perspective of the Botanic Garden. Certainly, that has been the effect for me. So yeah, that's really interesting, and I think it's a good segue to the next question to Leonie. Basically, could you tell us a bit more about that relationship between the installation and the very delicate ecosystem of the gardens? Maybe also what challenges you've encountered and how you've dealt with those. Thank you.
Yes, David, it's not that easy of a process. It's not like just having a public park or something where you can just sort of pop bits and pieces in wherever you like it. And certainly, yeah, I think perhaps over time we've sort of worked together and got a shared vision about what we can and can't do. But we very much started off with the, actually we need to be really careful here, and we need to test this and check that and try this and do those things. And I think as we've gone along, we've got a lot more adventurous. And I'm sort of looking at things, like you said, these spidey dudes that were hanging up off the ceiling up there. I mean, they're enough to keep me awake at night watching those dudes hanging off there. They were just phenomenal, and very rarely do we have people doing that type of thing in this type of structure, and that was really pushing my head from a safety perspective and amongst other things. But it was just phenomenal, and the guys did it brilliantly. In fact, I think I might get them back to actually clean the glass when they've done it, so they were really good. But there's a lot that goes into it. So things like, okay, you got to stick on the paths. We can't have you or people going through the collections. Potentially you're going to carry a pathogen on your feet. You don't know where you've been. You don't know what what sort of beastie you might introduce to the soil, or we don't want the roots impacted. We might need spaces around trees to keep a tree root zone protected. You want to hang things out of the tree, right? How are we going to do that? So we created new ways of installing objects in trees. We created new harnesses and new braces and new ways of wiring things up. And in here with the smoke, it's not so bad outside, but in here, the mist, well, what's its chemical composition? What's it going to do to the plants? Is it going to leave a film on the leaves? Is it going to upset the ecology? So lots and lots of different questions and lots of things to work through. And I think as we've gone through, it's probably why the Bicon sort of in this third year, because it's sort of taken us this long to get this brave to allow somebody into my bedroom, really. So that's what it feels like for us. But it's it's a special space, and I don't think we could do it without just basically doing the yes if question each time we come to those proposals. And it's just been such a great experience, and I hope that everybody gets to enjoy it as much as we have putting it together. So.
Thanks, Leonie. The next question I have is actually for Gabrielle, Pierre, and Leonie. Seeing that this is a behind-the-scenes tour, so I'm sure the audience would be interested to hear a bit more about if there are any anecdotes, insights, anything you can share basically from that behind-the-scenes collaboration.
Yes, I can start with one. Every day we have like those wonderful people from Illuminate Adelaide will go the weather forecast, and they will give us like a heads up. And then last week, my friend Daniel on the back here say, okay, I think we're gonna receive like to 40 millimeters to 50 millimeters of rain. And we are used to, because this is what we like to play outside. But then all the team were on the hold tight and make sure we can be ready for that. And I was not expecting that amount of rain and water. And one of the paths was completely soaked. That was a river. But basically, we are really happy because everything went well, but that was a lot amount of rain and water. And water and technology, if it's not well done, that can be a disaster. But basically, went pretty well, but that was one of them. Maybe that was...
Yes, yeah, it is, because there's two creeks that come through the garden. So First Creek and Botanic Creek both come through here, and that rain that we had in the last sort of week or two was pretty phenomenal, probably more than we would normally expect to have this time of year. So it was a bit of a surprise to all of us, actually, and it was certainly just adds another layer of challenge, but it just shows the professionalism of being able to cope with whatever nature throws at you. A little bit like our lake gate last year we had. So if you remember last year's experience when you came past the lake, the main lake in the gardens, and that just incredible laser display that was there, that was phenomenal, but it was almost not there. We, my dear horticultural staff very much take pride in how they present the garden, and bless them, there was a group of them that looked at the back of the lake, and there was a stand of cannas, and normally it's looking pretty good, and this time of year they're fine and they're doing the thing, but they decided they were just looking a little bit ratty, a little bit like, nah, let's just get rid of them and make it nice and neat and tidy and clean. So they did. They chopped them all down to the ground and they mulched the area, and beautiful. Next morning, it's like, where are those cannas gone? So what we didn't know was that those cannas were the backdrop to the lasers, and they were pivotal to the part of the display. And so, never one to miss a good crisis. Off we trot up to our nursery and then brought down a whole pile of conifers in pots. So, don't repeat this, but, as a Botanic Gardens, not really good. But so we just basically dug a whole pile of holes and put the plants in the pots, in the holes, and remulched it. And I don't think anyone ever knew that they weren't meant to be there. So I must admit, I really hope as a Botanic Gardens I never actually have to plant a plant in a pot in the ground ever again.
Thanks, Leonie.
Maybe one last one. When we were in here, like I was mentioning, on top view plans and technical drawings, very easy, right? Okay, we'll put something there, move left. So we show up here, and then those spider monkeys are up in there, and they say, hey, it doesn't fit. It doesn't, you cannot go there. There's a plant, there's this. So we really had to turn around and try to, I came in at night with the laser, like with my, and I'm a Canadian. I'm not very used to the spidery things that could hide in here. So I had my rain jacket over myself, zipped to here, and like trying to find those open holes where we could actually hang this stuff. So it was a day turnaround to be able to find good positions for the equipment that creates the effect that you'll be seeing in the coming days, I'm sure, if you come to see.
Wow, no, that's really interesting. I think I haven't even thought of that there must be lots of spiders up there. I'd be scared of those spiders too, yeah. No, that's a good point. No, I think I think there's soon we soon have afternoon tea, and there'll be a chance also for you to ask Moment Factory and Leonie some questions. But I feel like we probably have some time for questions from the audience, which we did in the round before. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Oh, so there's Tiana giving me the thumbs up. That's brilliant. So, would you like to ask? Are there any questions from the audience?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Quick question, it's just more of a technical one that came to mind while you were speaking, was all the equipment, is that all brought internationally here, or do you source some locally, or do you work with any local labour, or is it all international as well?
Everything is local. Yeah. So everything is local. We work, maybe we leave this one in the crowd, so if people have other questions. Everything is local. So we work with a local company and their equipment, and same for the staff. So we are a very small amount of people that come from Moment Factory. And this is why it's very nice, because the first year it was the pandemic, right? The first year of Light Cycles. So typically we fly 30 people, right, to do an intervention and integration and program everything. So then we said, hey, it's the pandemic, like we cannot fly. So year one, we flew 4 people in to do everything. And then we kind of kept this way of working. Like the people here, the technical, the creative people here are so skilled in Adelaide. We say that we don't need to come more people. So that's why very small team from Moment Factory, and all the rest comes from Adelaide and the surroundings.
Yeah, I think it's great because the first year our management company said it's impossible, we cannot do that, and we decided to push with Lee and Daniel and say, okay, let's find a way to make this happen. And it's part, I think the big success of it's communication, trust. And now it's great because after 3 years, we have a way to have a safe place to challenge idea. To do something here in the Bicon, you need to have the trust, you need to have the great communication, because that was quite ambitious. And I think this is what I will remember from this collaboration. It's like to have trust in our team, and and thanks God to the pandemic, that was a good thing emerged from that, I will say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there another question from the audience?
I find it interesting you call it an intervention rather than a show. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, it's really, I will say it's an experience. I will say than a show, because it's like something you live and you will experience through an amount of time. What I'm really proud, it's like people can spend like more than 1 hour, or some of them spend 2 hours. If you want to take your time, you can take your time and you can just be lost and have open your imagination, because you don't have a story to follow, or you don't have a specific theme. And I think that was one of the purpose. It's make sure we can discover the garden at night and have this moment of disbelief, of discovery and wonders also, basically.
Thank you.
Hi, I was just wondering on the design side, like if they've got the 5 zones around the place, does the design team work on all of them, or do you have specific designers working on a specific zone?
It's a full team working on all zones. So basically there's 6 zones total in the garden. And we go through the process of looking at the map, right? When we design the space, we say, okay, well, we would like to work in the Australian forest. We would like to work in Murdoch Alley, in the Bicon. And from there, we start developing ideas as a full team. So they comprise of lighting designers, sound designers, motion artists. So, yeah. It's always the full team that accompanies us throughout the zones. And this is what makes a sort of a homogenic experience, right? So that the people they know what's happening in zone 2 and they know what's happening in zone 6. Therefore, we can design accordingly and have a very like even experience, if you will.
Just on that, where you say an even experience, or do you actually sort of work on a progression to some extent from zone to zone?
Yeah, and this year we try something really interesting. We're calling the tune-in moment. It's like because this resonate experience, it's about to be connect with what you feel inside, can reflect the nature. But we have a moment, if you notice it, we have a bell gonna ring. It's like this moment of resonance from one moment for 12 seconds. The side's gonna be sync all at the same time. It's gonna be the same color, the same sound. And we dream about this moment of 3,000 people can be connect at the same time, on the same space, all around the garden. This is something really strong, and that was part of our intention, to have this strong connection with the audience and also with the nature.
Great. Yeah. Go on. I think Tiana will cut me off. Okay. Yes. Okay. That's it. I think. So I think if there are more questions, please feel free to ask them during the afternoon tea. And I'd like to just thank Leonie, Gabrielle, and Pierre for sharing all of this with us. That's brilliant. Thank you.